Good evening. Hope everything's going well with you. Hope you've had a good work day and that we can put some ground behind us with the wisdom literature in the Old Testament. Wisdom literature is premised upon the notion not so much of intellectual development, but of how to live life well. Wisdom is what you and I would probably call maybe common sense to some degree. It doesn't really matter if you're super bright, you've got a super high IQ, you can actually live like a fool. It doesn't matter if you are, nominally gifted, academically. You can be very, very wise. It's all how you interact with life. And how you think about the real things of life, the guts of life, if you will. And so wisdom literature in Israel appeals to that as well. The book of Job is the first book. It's an incredible book itself. Genre-wise, we don't have anything else like it. There's very little like it in the ancient Near Eastern world. It is it could conceivably be the oldest book in the Bible. It opens up with this very unique sort of interview with Yahweh and the sons of God. These and this sort of pantheon almost, and then the what we would call the devil, the adversary, comes into the pantheon meeting room and chats with God. And at that point, God introduces Job, the idea of Job anyway, to the adversary, and from that point forward, the adversary goes and tempts Job. Job is thought to be a blameless guy, completely above reproach, seems to understand who Yahweh is and sacrifices to him, even though he doesn't. There's nothing about Job that seems Israelite. Job is a righteous man, and Yahweh brings that up to the adversary. The adversary says that the only reason he's righteous is because he got such a cushy life. He is wealthy. He's got lots of kids, lots of houses. And so the adversary says, if you let me rob him of all that, take it all away, then in fact he'll curse you to your face. And so Yahweh says, gives him the green light, and this goes on, and throughout these cycles between Yahweh and the adversary, there's this devastation of Job. And Job begins this massive lament in chapter 3. And in this lament, there's a section of dialogues between chapters 4 and 27 where the friends of Job has sort of three friends plus one, and Job's friends talk very straight and openly with Job, and they're convinced by conventional wisdom that he did something wrong, that this is certainly why he is suffering the way he's doing, is because he clearly did something wrong. He's not owning up to it, and if he'll just own up to it, then he'll be better. And Job says, no, I did nothing wrong, and then tacks on, I'm righteous. There's nothing about me that's unrighteous. I'm righteous. And this goes on until we get to chapters 38 or 28 through 30. 38 through 41, rather. At 38 through 41, you have God speaking. And God, interestingly enough, comes into the discussion and speaks directly to Job, not so much to his friends, and speaks about his own divine wisdom and righteousness. Interestingly enough, he makes righteousness the point of the conversation, but he utilizes creation. So he says things like, Job, where were you when I told the ocean to only go so far? Or Job, I played with Leviathan and Behemoth, these two massive monsters that were thought to be chaos monsters and embodied chaos, which was the most idealistic, evil, and terrifying idea in the ancient Near East. He says, I play those monsters in the palm of my hand, Job. What do you do with them? Just a very sarcastic sort of, weaning at Job all the way throughout 38 through 41. And the whole idea seems to be, Job, you are better than your friends. You'll claim that you are, but righteous is only something that belongs to me. You are as righteous essentially as you are capable, essentially. And so your righteousness might be better than your friends, but your righteousness doesn't even approximate me. And this becomes the real high point of the book. And the book seems to indicate, seems to be about this, that, dreaming, pulling this point into stark clarity that all of the lousy advice that his friends were giving him was conventional wisdom. And if in fact his all that had to be done was, if the universe was this cause and effect sort of place where if you did wrong, then wrong things happen. If you do right, then right things happen. If it was that kind of a place, a simplistic kind of a place, then they would have been given good advice, but they weren't, because there was a God that was alive, and he was completely and utterly, the only one in essence that was righteous. Job and his friends both didn't have that righteousness, and because there was a living God that was righteous, then the world was quite different, and good was different, and righteous was different, and because it was all oriented to Him. The fact of the matter is, if you're going to live a wise life, you have to, with any kind of intellectual honesty whatsoever, you've got to orient your life toward the existence of God. I was an atheist for quite some time, and I did not, find the existence of God a very compelling idea. And so I would say that there was that even though I might have done wise things, there was an element about me that you could just probably say I was never actually wise. Even though I might have done wise things, I was never actually wise. In the same way that a really honest person might tell a lie at some point, but that doesn't mean they're a liar, right? They simply lied. So positively, I did wise things when I was an atheist, but I don't think you could call me wise, because all wisdom is oriented towards this living God, and the best of conventional wisdom seems to fall short of it. Job's a scary story, but it makes a fantastic point with regard to that. With regard to the wisdom literature, one of the things that's integral to wisdom literature is worship. Worship and wisdom are very integral kinds of things. The book of Proverbs or book of Psalms rather, is divided into 5 different song books. These were the songs of Israel, and they sing like the songs of Israel. They are designed to draw Israel into worship of Yahweh. In the broadest pan-biblical sense, these songs not only have kind of a static in time feel to them, as far as that they generate worship for Israel, but they also have an eschatological lean toward the New Testament, in that the vast majority of them seem to be written with great hope toward the establishment and solidarity of the Davidic king, or we would say the coming, perhaps the coming Davidic king, since the Psalms here come at the end of the canonical history of the Old Testament. They come toward the end. They're meant to point the worshiper not just simply towards the great heritage of Israel, but also the future of Israel, namely the Messiah. The book of Proverbs is premised all upon the notion of the fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord is a really interesting kind of thing. I would define the fear of the Lord like this. I would define it as the correct assessment of and an appropriate reaction to Yahweh. So the idea is, if someone looks at God, for example, and says, I don't really think God's a big deal, it's safe to say that then they are not assessing God properly. If someone says, I'm terrified that God is going to send me to hell because I've been bad, and because I've been bad, I don't think God can forgive me, or something like that, that's also falls under not assessing God properly. And so the notion is seeing God for who He really is, seeing God for what He's genuinely capable of. And then I think the phrase "fear the Lord" just came from the obvious natural response that emerged from those ideas. So fear of the Lord, once again, just like in Job, becomes the foundational property in the book of Proverbs for understanding how to live a wise life. Chapters 1 through 9 are all about the personification of wisdom. And this is the essence of Proverbs 1 through 9 is kind of a grid through which you read 10 through 31. So you look at Proverbs 1 through 9, you've got a father and a son talking to one another. You've got the father and the son speaking to one another specifically about wisdom, and that grid is what you look at from the vantage point on. Within 1 through 9, you've got the father understanding that the son's having competing voices. The most obvious competing voices in 1 through 9 are unchecked power and illicit sexuality. And so those are major powerful voices. And so the father's advice and the father's wisdom is meant to counter those very powerful countering voices to his voice. And from 10 through 31, you've got all of the anecdotal sorts of psalms, short, pithy sayings that are simply meant to provide a good sense of advice, and really more than advice to some degree. They really provide. It's like all things being equal, this is always true. So, for example, one of the Proverbs says that if a man's way is right before the Lord, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. All things being equal, that's true, but it's not always true. If in fact you raise a child in the way that the child goes, in the end he won't depart from it. In all things being equal, that's true, but not always true. That's how Proverbs work. And Solomon is thought to be the primary author of Proverbs, in the same way that David is supposed to be the primary author or one of the primary authors of the Psalms. Speaking of Solomon, Ecclesiastes and Song of Songs, or in your English Bible, Song of Solomon, are the next two books, and they both have a very different take on fear of the Lord from one another. One is sort of life-denying in its orientation, Ecclesiastes, and one is life-absorbing and celebrating in Song of Songs. And we'll look at those when we come back.